Martinsville was fun. Let's talk about it. This episode of Above the Yellow Line is presented by Shaq Eye Gear. Hey everyone, it's Taylor and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line. Happy Halloween. I'm not going to be doing this anymore, so we're going to put all these down, but Martinsville was a crazy race. We got to talk about that for Xfinity and Cup, especially who was going to be in our championship for all of these races. So let's talk about it, starting with Xfinity. We got a wardrobe change into the ATYL merch. Now we are good. Let's talk about your championship for the Xfinity Series. The championship for in the Xfinity Series are Noah Gragson, Justin Allgaier, Barry, and Ty Gibbs. However, it didn't look like it was going to be that way. There was a chance to be 2 Junior Motorsports drivers and 2 Joe Gibbs drivers in that championship for, but as I'm sure you've heard at this point, there was some drama at the end of the race. Ty Gibbs was racing his teammate, Brandon Jones, who had to win to get into the championship for, and he had a really good shot to win as well. They were racing together on that final lap. Then Ty Gibbs drove into him, spun him out, and Ty Gibbs took the win for himself. To be fair, they were racing really rough back and forth. However, in my opinion, I did not feel like driving through Brandon Jones was justified, especially because, 1, you are teammates. 2, Brandon Jones, your teammate, has to win to get into the playoffs. They said that they would deal with this issue internally, but at the track, if you saw my TikToks, my short on this application, whether you're looking at YouTube or TikTok or whatever it may be, you saw the people at the track were not happy. There were chants of, "Thank you, Grandpa." There were boos to Ty Gibbs after the race when he was doing his burnout. It was not received well by fans what Ty Gibbs did to Brandon Jones. In Ty Gibbs' defense, what I'm sure he was thinking of trophy hunting. He wanted the win. That I can think. Something else that he might have been thinking of, but I'm not going to put words into his mouth, is, hey, if I'm the sole Joe Gibbs driver going into the championship 4, that means all the focus is on me, on my equipment. That means I can do the best I can, while Junior Motorsports has to put their focus onto 3 cars. 3 cars that have to be the best they can be going into the championship fight. Maybe that was on his mind. I don't know if it was on his mind, but that's something else that maybe he had out there to consider. That's where I see Gibbs' head being at, but it does not excuse, in my opinion, what he did to his teammate. And after the race, he made some unsavory comments. I'm not going to mention them here. You can go look them up yourself from Sirius XM Radio. But to me, it was distasteful, it was disrespectful, and it just was a lack of awareness for this situation, in my opinion. And for somebody who is going to potentially be heading to Cup in 2023, taking over the number 18 ride is what we are assuming is going to happen. Obviously, no announcement yet. This concerns me, and I think he will be put in his place very quickly. Again, I'm not saying anything new that we haven't heard the commentators say. I'm not saying anything new that any other maybe NASCAR YouTuber or somebody online has said. I'm just reiterating my thoughts and what everyone else has said up to this point. But I think it was a unanimous kind of thought amongst all the NASCAR fans that we did not like what Ty Gibbs did. Again, there is truth to saying that Brandon Jones did race Ty Gibbs pretty rough, but Ty Gibbs ran through Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones did not run through Ty Gibbs. He might have nudged him a little bit. That's where I see this being an issue. And Brandon Jones, after the race, said, man, is he glad to be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing to go to Junior Motorsports. I think it's a great home for him, and his redemption season, I think, is going to be next year, given everything that has happened. So Brandon Jones, he spoke pretty well after the race, given the situation, dejected, obviously, for not making it into the championship for when he did have a chance. But that is the issue between Ty Gibbs and Brandon Jones. Now we got to move on to another issue after the race. Myatt Snider versus Austin Hill. Oh my God. I want to be quick with this because we don't know the resolution to this just yet, but after the race, Austin Hill punched, like clobbered, Myatt Snider on pit road. Here's the video of it for you to take a look at. This happened after the two got together on the track late in the race, as Austin Hill was battling to make it into the championship 4. And at this point, I don't think he even had a chance to make it into the championship 4. I mean, with 38 to go, he got into a wreck that was caused by, I think, Howie DeSavino and Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed got into Howie, and then it piled up a few more cars there. And at that point, I think Austin Hill was just done, but then was angrier and angrier as he kept getting into wrecks during the day. So then that caused a confrontation on pit road. Austin Hill said that he asked Myatt Snider to leave him alone. He did not, and that resulted in the punch. NASCAR did say, though, that they were going to review this, and there's most likely going to be a penalty involved. I think NASCAR is going to step in and say, hey, that's not okay. The penalty, though, we don't know yet. We'll probably hear about it either later today, tomorrow, or Wednesday when the penalty reports usually come out, but yeah, not a good look, Austin Hill and Myatt Snider right there, so we'll see what happens with that. that's Xfinity. Now let's go into our Cup points. I say points because we're going to get into our results too, but honestly, they all mesh together. So let's just talk about what happened at Martinsville for the Cup Series. This guy is able to win when the points are against him, capturing Joe Gibbs Racing's 200th win, getting his 3rd win of the season and his 2nd win in the playoffs. Getting it when it mattered most, we have Christopher Bell winning his way into the championship 4. It was an impressive ride from Christopher Bell, and honestly, for me, one of the biggest threats going into the championship race at Phoenix next weekend, or I guess this weekend at this point. So very impressive from Christopher Bell, but probably the biggest storyline coming out of Martinsville, and probably the most impressive storyline, is what Ross Chastain did on the final lap. We saw a move out of a playbook nobody was holding except for maybe Kyle Larson in Darlington 2021 when he was able to do a video game move, riding the wall, trying to get past Denny Hamlin. Unfortunately for Kyle Larson, it didn't work for him then, but Ross Chastain played that same move at Martinsville, of all places, trying to get past Denny Hamlin, and his move worked and advanced him into the championship 4 over Denny Hamlin. I think we all had to pause for a second. We didn't know what to think about this. We were just in disbelief. Everyone at home, the commentators, the fans at the track. It was a wild moment that Ross Chastain just pulled out of thin air. He said it came from his days playing at NASCAR 2005 on, I think, his GameCube is what he said. So an absolutely wild moment. As with all race endings like this, it came with controversy. Some drivers were okay with it, some drivers were not, some fans and whatever were okay with it, some were not. Notably though, Kyle Larson said this was an embarrassment to our sport. He mentioned that, yeah, I did this at Darlington in 2021, but I'm glad I didn't win with this move. I think that's a little hypocritical, so I'm not a fan of that comment. Ryan Blaney did say as well that this was embarrassing to our sport. On the other side though, Denny Hamlin said that this move really impressed him, and Kevin Harvick on Twitter went on to say this move was epic, and that people usually don't have the guts to pull off stuff like this. They just talk the talk, but Ross Chastain was able to walk the walk at this point. So a varying spectrum of drivers that thought this was okay and thought that this wasn't. Fans on social media and others were quick to criticize this move, but like I mentioned, lots of people saying, should this be something that NASCAR bans in the future? Is this even allowed? NASCAR says that this falls within the sanctions of the rulebook. Nothing says that this move is not allowed, so it was totally fine, but people say for the future, do we need to have a rule about this move? In my opinion, no. I think we just have to keep an eye on it, because the worry is now that every driver is going to do this to get a win, and this is like a special case scenario. Like, there's only a few instances on the track when coming to the checkered flag that somebody could really do this move and pull it off. So I don't think we have to have a rule against it. I think that's a little too far. And I think the more we set rules as to what drivers can and cannot do, it makes the racing really stiff, in my opinion. Might change my thoughts if this happens again. Who knows? But as for right now, I think this is totally fine. So with Christopher Bell winning and Ross Chastain making a video game move into the championship 4, that is 2 out of the 4 spots. Obviously, Joey Logano winning one of those spots at Vegas, locking himself into the championship 4, so that's 3. The 4th driver to make it into the championship 4 is Chase Elliott. So altogether, your championship 4, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano. Now let's talk about the guys that were cut from the championship 4 fight. Probably most notably for me is Denny Hamlin. I've talked about this on the show before. I think it's been mentioned too on the broadcast and everything like that, but statistically, somebody for Denny Hamlin's age, this is kind of the last good year for him to get a championship and for him to not advance into the championship 4. I don't see him getting a championship in the Cup Series ever, unfortunately. I would love to be proved wrong. He was actually my championship pick, so my bracket at this point is pretty busted. But I would love to see him get a championship at some point. I just do not think it's actually going to happen based on statistics. He dominated a lot of the race at Martinsville and unfortunately wasn't able to make it stick with cautions, a slow pit stop. It just was not his year, unfortunately. So for Denny Hamlin, he's going to have to think of what could have been again as he's not able to race for a championship. For William Byron, he was cut from the championship fight. I think he was cut going into this race, quite honestly. He was below the cutoff line by quite a bit. Plus, he also did not qualify well at all. And at Martinsville, you have to have really good track position going into the race to even have a chance, and he just was not able to make it. So William Byron also cut from the fight. Another driver that was cut was Ryan Blaney. I really wanted to see him in the championship 4, but he just did not have the card that was able to get the lead. We saw him in 2nd place, 3rd place, honestly anywhere under the sun for Ryan Blaney, and unfortunately was not able to get it to the lead when he had to. Just like I said, did not have the car in my eyes to be able to get that track position. Finally, the driver that was cut was Chase Briscoe, and actually in the last 20 laps when we had that caution, he was able to stay out, getting no tires with his teammate Cole Custer. I thought he could have won the whole thing, but unfortunately, the tires came to the drivers that got it. So, like, the tires were able to work into the track. They were able to gain track position while Chase Briscoe started to slowly fade back in those last 20 laps. So it was very unfortunate, but I gotta give him kudos here. He was racing really, really well, and then he had a pit stop issue. I believe it was equipment removed from the pit box with the gas can that kind of just ruined his day. And at that point, I think it was kind of decided that he was not going to be in the championship for that mistake on pit road earlier in the race. So a really valiant effort from the 14 team. They were really scrappy this year, hungry, getting everything they could get to advance into the championship 4. And unfortunately, it just wasn't their year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they cleaned things up a little bit, made a shot at it next year. They would get into the championship fight and then maybe, possibly, get into the championship 4, but we will have to see. But Chase Briscoe, unfortunately, was cut as well. All that said and done, we will talk more in depth about the point situation and the stats going into Phoenix with your championship 4 on Wednesday for our preview episode, while we also talk about some NASCAR news because there is some exciting news that came out of this weekend as well with some drivers' futures. But for now, let's look at the rest of the finishing results at Martinsville. And first, like I said, was Christopher Bell, second Larson, third Blaney, fourth Ross Chastain, fifth Denny Hamlin, sixth Logano, seventh Byron, eighth Wallace, ninth Briscoe, and 10th Elliott. So these are the results after the post-race inspection. If you've heard and if you have not, Brad Keselowski originally finished in the 4th position. Unfortunately for him, gosh, that 6 team has not had good luck this year. They were DQ'd from the race for failing to meet minimum weight requirements after the post-race inspection. That's meant the finishing results were moved around. And can you imagine if Ross Chastain did not make that move to get in the position he was at the end of the race? I think we would have had an upset with the playoffs being shaken up. I think maybe Denny Hamlin would have gotten in on points, and then Ross Chastain would have been out. But with Brad Keselowski not finishing where he did, we would have to look at the points again. And if they were tied, Ross Chastain would have been the tiebreaker. Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin out. That would have caused an uproar after the race. So I am glad that did not happen. But Brad Keselowski DQ'd from Martinsville. They are going to have to come back next year guns a-blazing because this is not the number 6 year. Then I gotta talk about Cole Custer because, my God, this guy was running in the 5th position, like, in and out of that all day long, or in the top 10, and then at the end of the race with that no tire call, just kind of lost it, but he was running a great race. If it was my decision, which it is, I would give him MVP, but unfortunately, I gotta give the Shaq iGear MVP to Christopher Bell, who was able to win his way in to the playoffs, and then with an honorable mention being Ross Chastain, because that move was spectacular. But with Cole Custer, he finished in the 14th position. I wish it would have been a better finish for him because he needs it, I think. Nevertheless, a great race for him. Talking about the guys now that did not finish this race, one of those, and most notably, being Tyler Reddick. Reddick retired early from the race after complaining that his head was hurting him. After talking to a crew member, I believe this was Jordan Bianchi that reported this, they said that after Homestead, he was just kind of feeling off. Of course, we know that he crashed at Homestead, DNF from that race. So there was concern that there might be a concussion, but after being evaluated at the Infield Care Center after getting a neurological exam, Reddick was cleared from that. Reddick chose not to comment after being released from the Infield Care Center, which I respect. Health is the first concern. It is also a privacy thing, so we hope that Reddick is better and is able to compete at Phoenix. As of right now, he definitely is. There needs to be no further evaluation from him according to the Infield Care Center and the reports that I have heard. So we will see how he is doing. I hope he is doing all right, but Tyler Reddick did not finish this race, had to retire. Something that I want to mention real quickly before we go to our race rating is that we saw 3 Fords catch on fire on pit road or on track this weekend. We know that there's been an issue with rubber buildup with the Fords, specifically the rubber catching on fire near the wheel well and stuff like that. So that's something that I think we need to keep an eye out for at Phoenix with the Ford specifically. As I said, I hope it doesn't affect Joey Logano in his championship run, but it has happened to him before, so I'm concerned. Nevertheless, just a thought to keep in your head as we go into our race rating, rating this race above or below the yellow line. On Twitter, 41% of you said this was a great race, 28% said good, 23% said okay, and 8% said bad. On YouTube, out of so far 957 votes, 76% of you said this was a great race, 12% said good, 7% said okay, and 4% said bad. As for my race rating, the race was not perfect. The last 20 laps really made this race, so did the playoff drama. However, with the lack of passing, I know we're going to get that at a short track, especially at Martinsville, at a track that depends on track position. It still irked me a little bit because we've seen more passing in the past. I think with this package that we have with the short tracks, with the Gen 7 car, I think it needs some tweaks still to make this race as perfect as it can be, to make these races as perfect as it can be. So my rating's not going to be super high for this, but it's still going to be technically above the yellow line. I'm going to give this race a rating of 50%. It was a wild Martinsville race. What would you rate this race yourself? Also, what do you think of the Xfinity drama, that Ross Chastain video game move? Let me know in the comments below, and with that, we are done with this episode of Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. To hear more from us at TobyChristieCom and Above the Yellow Line, make sure to check out our social media pages at _TaylorKitchen_ on Twitter and TikTok. We post some racing stuff there too, so make sure to follow that. Also, we are on YouTube and Instagram and wherever you get your podcasts with the username Above the Yellow Line. Also, make sure to check out TobyChristieCom on all social media platforms to read more from the team and your favorite drivers. Last but not least, I want to thank a huge supporter of TobyChristieCom and Above the Yellow Line, that is Shaq Gear. To show your support, make sure to use the promo code MAMBA34 to get 20% off your order of Shaq Gear glasses. You can find all of our social pages linked in the description below, but before you check those out, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and guys, thank you so much for supporting us here at Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com, and until next time, we'll see ya.